Alright guys, this is IronWings3187 with another review coming at you today. Hope you enjoy the new intro. Without any further ado, let's get into it. My apologies for this being a bit different than what I promised you in my last video. Unfortunately, my newest idea, the concept I had of the Marlin Camp carbine and Ruger Mini 14, has been put on hold for the foreseeable future due to some health complications after a trip to the range. To explain, I went to the range here this last week to film some footage for the video, and I wanted to do some actual shooting comparisons between the two on the actions and the accuracy. I had done 2 or 3 rounds out of the Marlin Camp carbine, which I shot first because the barrel is a bit thicker. Therefore, if I needed multiple takes or multiple shots of me firing the weapon and of grouping downrange, accuracy would be less affected than it would be with the Ruger Mini 14. When I was down at the range, unfortunately, a steel target rack, a frame, fell down in front of my camera while I was shooting and, well, not only broke the camera, which means it's now, the footage from downrange is unsalvageable, but I had to go down to get it out of the frame because I know it had broken the camera. I just knew it was in the way. So I picked the frame up before I could continue shooting, turned around to start walking back to the firing line, and the frame fell down again, this time landing directly on the back of my calf, shredding it. I had to go to the hospital directly after this, grabbing my guns. I didn't even pack them up. So, after I went to the hospital, I found out I needed to get 7 stitches. I've been on a course of antibiotics, so I'm very limited in not only my mobility, but where I'm able to travel due to the fact that I have stitches on my calf, which could very much break or bust, and then I'd have to reopen a gash on my calf. So, for the time being, I am stuck at home, working from home. I haven't been able to get back out to the range to do footage, so until further notice, the Marlin Camp carbine and Ruger Mini 14 comparison video is on hold, unfortunately. But I did still promise you all a video this week, so what I will be doing is instead reviewing the first pistol I have ever purchased for myself, the Walther P22. This is a 22 caliber double single action hammer fired pistol with a polymer lower and a single stack 10 round magazine. So to give you a bit of a story or background behind this pistol, I went to college in Humboldt State, California, Arcata, California, and it's very well known for the redwoods and hiking scene that it is. I'm very much an avid outdoorsman despite my weight and size. I love hunting, love fishing, love backpacking and camping. So, while I was up there, I wanted just a little backpack gun, something that I could throw in my range pack or my hiking pack, go out into the woods with, and I'd have something that I could use to take rabbits, my apologies, get some form of small game if I needed something to cook for dinner, if we had to stay out overnight for some reason, or, defend myself, maybe shoot a snake or some small animal that was going after me. So, and not only that, but I wanted something that I could possibly use for personal defense because Humboldt up there, if you go out into the woods, is very well known for having illegal marijuana grows, and that can be very dangerous, and that's the reason the area is called Murder Mountain, is because people will just go out hiking in the woods, stumble across a massive marijuana grow, and they'll never come back out. So, one day before I went out hiking for a 4-day weekend, I went to the local gun shop called Stick to Your Guns, and I was looking for something that I could throw in my backpack. I wanted either a Ruger Wrangler or a Heritage Rough Rider, depending on what was available. Well, unfortunately, in my local gun shop, both of those options were pretty much sold out. From what I remember, there was a Heritage Rough Rider with like a 7-inch barrel and two chambers, the 22 Magnum and the 22 Long rifle. But I thought that was not a good backpack gun or a hiking gun. So I just passed on that. But I saw this in the display case. It is a first year or second year production based on the serial number. It is in the 11,000 range, and it was made by Smith & Wesson in Springfield, Massachusetts, under license from Walther. I believe this was made in 2003, based on that serial number, and from what I understand, this was made by Springfield because Walther could not legally import these pistols into the country due to the import ban and not meeting some of the requirements needed to allow them to be imported. So this was a first generation series. I believe the second generation came out with a captive recoil spring and guide rod, which we'll go into in a second. And over the years, I put several thousand rounds of ammunition through this, and this is probably one of the most accurate pistols I've owned. It is a pin barrel direct blowback action, and it uses the recoil spring and weight of the slide as the locking mechanism, similar to my Marlin Camp carbine. Due to that pin barrel, this pistol is very much accurate, and the rear sights, I don't know if you can see them there, are 2-dot rear and 1-dot front, which makes this a very intuitive pistol for a beginner to learn how to shoot. One of the main negative aspects of this firearm is the fact that for the first generation, because they use a non-captive guide rod and recoil spring, the recoil spring was very much a overbuilt or over-strengthened part. And what that meant is that the firearm could not reliably cycle lower standard velocity ammunition. Things like CCI standard velocity or federal range ammunition would not run and do not run reliably in this pistol for me. And there are currently options available to deal with that issue. Mainly, there is an aftermarket recoil spring guide rod captive combination you can buy on Midway USA for, I think, $19. And from what my neighbor has told me, he owns one of these too, that does allow you very much to run standard velocity ammunitions without it jamming as frequently. It will still jam every once in a while just because it is a direct blowback, and a lot of standard velocity doesn't really have a lot of momentum to kick an empty shell casing out or to kick the slide back, but it still does allow it to run somewhat reliably. So that's kind of where this gun got a bad reputation in the community, was it was seen as unreliable due to that overbuilt spring, and there were a lot of ways around it. Some people snipped a couple of coils off of it, which allowed it to, again, cycle more reliably. Me personally, I don't have an issue with it. I've never had it jam if I was using anything higher than about 1,200 feet per second for pistol ammo. Well, just ammunition in general, now that I think about it, because I've noticed a pattern when it came to me shooting firearms, because I took this to the range about 6 months ago to a year with every type of .22 ammunition I've ever bought, from massive 800 pack, sorry, heartburn from coffee. I've had it at the range using everything from an 800 round bulk pack of federal range ammunition, the blue boxes, to standard velocity Wolf match grade ammunition. And I have found that typically anything under 1,200 to 1,250 feet per second doesn't run this reliably. Anything over that is reliable, but if you really want like peak performance, you're going to want to try and get it above the 13 to 1350 feet per second range, which is actually kind of a difficult feat to achieve with this shorter barrel. It is a 3 3/4 inch barrel from what I remember. But even so, you can have it done. CCI Stinger or Mini Mag are fantastic for that. My personal preference for concealed carry, I carry this on my property, which is legal to do in this state, despite some people not thinking so. I throw this in my pocket and walk around my private property all the time. I use what you see here, the Federal Punch round. It is a 29 grain, I believe, flat nose going 1,000 feet per second out of a 2-inch snub nose. And I believe it reaches 12 to 1300 feet per second out of this barrel itself. So it's actually a fairly nice little round for coyotes or, gophers, anything that pops up on your property, dogs. So, not really a whole lot more to say on this, just because realistically I could tell you how fantastically reliable this firearm is, how simple it is to disassemble, because it is fairly simple. All you do is lower that latch, pull the slide back, lift it up, and ride it forward, similar to a Walther P22. Surprising, I know, given the same brand. But the ergonomics, I think, are fantastic. You can see here it actually fits my hand fairly well. The pinky is almost hanging off of the grip, but not quite. It's about halfway there. It feels fantastic in the hand. I feel the controls are actually fairly well placed. The slide release and slide lock is very easily reached and allows for a very reliable, easy function. The magazine release here under the trigger guard is somewhat problematic. Not for the usual reason you think. Ergonomically, it makes a whole lot more sense, because if you look at the way my hand is placed, if I were to shoot this and it had the traditional button magazine release, because my thumb would be right over it, every time I'd take a shot, I more than likely would drop the magazine out of it. So it is a good placement to keep you from dropping the magazine, but it means that in order to release your mag, you have to shift your hand, remove your grip, and then drop the magazine and reload, which in any defensive situation is never going to be ideal. The safety is also very accessible, and I actually like that it is ambidextrous, just because then you can do offhand shooting as well. Same thing with the magazine release. So I do like the ambidextrous controls on this. It does come with different back straps that you can swap in and out with, pushing out the roll pin here with a punch. And the only other thing I can say is when it comes to reassembly, if you go to reassemble this without the captive guide rod, not only do you have to compress the spring, hold it in the front, and just kind of oddly reassemble it. I can't really do that right now because I don't feel like taking this pistol apart. In order to get the slide to ride forward, you have to go in and pull the hammer down manually with your finger, and that will allow it to ride forward. You just saw me kind of simulating what it is. Unfortunately, again, I can't really do it without disassembling the gun, which I don't feel like dealing with tonight because of the spring. So there are a few quirks about the pistol. There's not really a whole lot more to say. I could talk about the trigger a bit. So when it comes to the single action, it's actually a fairly light trigger. It's very clean, and if you listen, there's your reset. It's a very hefty reset, so let's go ahead and redo that. Here's your trigger pull, a little bit of take up, and then break. Very clean, like snapping glass, and then there's your trigger reset exactly there. So now if you don't see, that trigger is almost all the way to the front. That's fully to the front now, and about there is where the trigger reset is. So that's a very long reset. And then double action. Extremely hefty, but it is, again, a clean break right there. And you can feel it. You've got almost a 3-stage trigger here. You've got the quick take up for cocking. Then you've got the heavy hill climb. And then your break. So it is a very clean trigger. It is hefty because it is a rimfire pistol, and it's got a long reset time. So with the double action, right there, so you can again see that trigger is almost fully to the front. So beyond the trigger not being the best in terms of pull weight. It is a fantastically clean trigger, and this pistol is very accurate. I have gotten dime-sized groups out of this pistol at 25 yards, but that is about the max of what you're going to want to push this pistol to. I have shot targets out to 100 yards, and out of a magazine of about 10 rounds, I've seen 2 or 3 holes on the target, not even in a group, just on the target. And I think those were by like some miracle I managed to land those. Yeah, other than that, there isn't really a whole lot to say on this pistol other than what I've just discussed. Because I can tell you how fantastic this pistol is, in particular how reliable it is, how easy it is to disassemble, and then my neighbor's pistol that's the same brand, same model, same make, his is almost impossible to disassemble because the disassembly latch is almost glued or welded in place. It feels like it's not easy to get down. The reassembly is a massive pain in the ass at some points, and the pistol itself will not function with any ammo that is any less hot than a Gila Supermax or Super Hot, something like that, hypervelocity ammunition basically, because it still needs to break in, is what he's saying. He's only fired 2 or 3 magazines through it. So as much as I'd like to review this pistol, it is going to be up to everyone out there who likes this design, sees this video, to buy one if they want it, and basically go out and test it for yourself, because as it sits, 22 semi-autos, both pistols and rifles, have long been kind of known as being very ammo picky and almost individual in their construction. What one 10-22 Ruger will function with in terms of magazines, ammunition, so on and so forth, does not mean it will function with another 10-22. The magazine could cause it to jam because the feed angle went wrong, or the ammunition could not throw the bolt back, or it could bite into the feed ramp. There's any number of issues with 22 rifles and pistols, so you really do have to go out and test this on your own and find out what works best for your pistol. Would I recommend you buy one of these and do that? Absolutely, because the price tag when I bought this was $200 at a gun shop, and it was used with the owner only ever having shot 1 magazine out of the rifle, and that was because it kept jamming on him because he was using, from what I understand, Steve told me, CCI standard velocity, which about half of the box was left in the gun case with it. So, would I recommend you go out and buy one of these? Absolutely, because I think for that price, $200 to $300, you're really not going to get a better semi-automatic design, let alone a better 22 pistol for that price range. When you put it up against something like the High Point C9, which I think would be about the only other competitor in the price range for this pistol, yes, this is a 22, but it also weighs significantly less. It is more slim. It's better constructed in my mind than the High Point C9. So, yeah, I highly recommend this pistol because for the price you're getting a very high quality product. And yes, there are some issues with reliability, but that is also either addressed with a $20 aftermarket part or by just running higher velocity ammunition, which should kind of be your go-to anyway, as 22 standard velocity ammunition is kind of gone the way of the 22 long and 22 short. It's still out there, it's still available, but I believe, to me, in my area, you kind of have to actively search that ammunition out. You have to look for standard velocity, whereas high and hyper velocity 22 long rifle is very readily accessible in non-pandemic times. So there are issues with this pistol, do not get me wrong, but I can highly recommend it, and I really do think you cannot go wrong with this pistol. With that, I'm going to let you guys go. This has been Iron Wings 3187 with another review. Thank you for watching.